Welcome back to another chess game analysis video. So today I again want to show you one of my favorite openings at the moment, especially for blitz, shorter time controls and against not so high rated opponents. It's the Mengarini variation of the Sicilian defense after e4, c5 and a3. So I'm playing with the white pieces in this game and I played this online again as usually. When it's not a classical game. Knight c6, the normal response, and with b4 you give up one pawn and you gambit a pawn. Normally you don't get the pawn back because you offer the a and the b pawn for your opponent's c pawn. So it can be considered a real gambit. After a takes b4, knight takes b4, c3, kicking the knight, knight c6 back d4. You have a very nice center here and some compensation. Because you can always kick the knight and you have an open line for your d5, a very principled move, main move. E takes d5, queen takes d5. In this main variation, black just has to be careful not to get in a losing position within 10 moves, because there are a lot of traps here. And it seems like a little bit weird what white is doing, but this is all theory and there are very nice traps and ideas that you can pursue here with white. And even if black doesn't fall into any traps, you still have a comfortable game, a little bit of an opening advantage, even though it seems like black is better developed here at this point with queen and knight. You will get a lot of tempo because the queen is not so well placed and a little bit exposed here in this position. So he plays principled bishop f5, which is not the perfect way to react here. One of the traps I wanted to quickly show you in this position would be knight f6, a very normal development move, but this is also already a losing position after knight b5, threatening here this family fork here, the royal fork. So queen d8 back, d5, kicking the knight, knight b8. By the way, if you try to take this pawn, then cross queen takes, and after the queens are exchanged, you again have this fork, so you lose a pawn or a piece anyway. So after knight b8, you would have bishop f4, and then you don't really have a way to stop this very nasty fork here. And not like this, and this is basically already losing. So after bishop f5 certainly the better alternative than knight f6. But this also has this problem with knight b5 going in there. Now, the best way to react to this threat is actually rook c8, and after something like knight takes a7, knight takes a7, rook takes a7, knight f6 development, knight f3 development, you gain back your pawn with white, and with black you just give back the pawn and you say, okay, I'm going to develop, I don't even want this pawn, and I'm going to just play a normal game. If you try to hold on to the pawn, it can be quite dangerous. So instead of this, my opponent reacted to this by playing queen d8 back, and this could already be exploited, but I didn't find it. I played bishop f4, unfortunately. d5, always this very nice strike in the center, kicking the knight, would again have been best. Knight e5 into the center, bishop f4. And now if the knight moves again, you see this knight on b5 very nicely placed, always looking here to fork the opponent's king. So you have to react to this threat. Also the knight is attacked here, so it can't really move, it has to be defended by f6, a move that you never really want to play. Especially in this position, it's very easily exploitable. Knight f3, now pressuring the knight again, the knight still can't move. If you take here on f3, would have been best, the queen just recaptures, and you have the same problem with the fork here. So for instance, a6, kicking the knight away, so that it can't fork anymore. But now it goes into the center, knight from b to d4, attacks the bishop, bishop back, knight e6 in there. You still down a pawn, but with this very strong knight, the pawn structure f6 has been played. This pawn still very nasty here in the center. So I think this is, the engine already gives +9. I think there's still a little bit to play here, but still a hard position for black here. So this would have been one variation, d5. Always, if you want to play this opening, consider this d5 move. I did not. I played bishop f4. He plays rook c8. Now, one of the ways that black can respond to this fork is the typical e5 move, which would have been possible here. You give back a pawn, bishop takes e5, knight takes, and d takes, and then you can maybe exchange the queen, so you can just develop. You have less problems than in the game. E5 normally a way to give back the pawn. If you don't want to have too much risk in the game. Normally if your opponent gambits, you really need to either be sure what you're doing or you need to give back the pawn at some point, because otherwise it's just too dangerous if you have no clue what you're doing. So Rook C8 was played. I grabbed this pawn. Now I just tried to get back some material. Knight takes and Rook takes. And now white is a little bit better, and there are some ideas like Queen B6, activating the queen, which would have been better. But my opponent somehow got quite greedy and he tried to attack the pawn chain here, the root of the pawn chain, making the d pawn weak, which seems like an okay move, but it just doesn't work tactically at all. You see this diagonal has been weakened, and both these pieces can actually go onto this diagonal, and both checks are equally good. I think developing the bishop is a little bit more natural than going in with the queen, just because the queen is still in here in the center to defend the pawn, maybe goes in this direction. So I chose the bishop, but the queen would have also worked. Bishop d7, basically only move, and now the queen comes again, now pressuring the king here on this diagonal. Now you need to be very careful. If you do something silly like nothing, then just bishop takes, queen takes is forced, and then you have this problem that the king is in check and nothing really can block anymore. If you block with the rook is just taken. The queen is basically overworked here in this position, so you need to be very careful here. My opponent found the best resource, knight f6, defends the bishop and also develops a piece. Rook takes b7. I thought, okay, pressuring the bishop even more is a good idea. It's alright, it's still winning. Probably not the best approach here, but the approach with knight e2, first kicking the rook away, gaining a tempo, is probably something I would have considered in the classical match. But in blitz, I think rook takes b7, gets the pawn back. He's still very much underdeveloped, me as well, but I think these pieces are just very nicely placed, so this is why white is actually better here. e6, and now you see why white is already better. Now it's already possible. There was no defense, by the way, against this. White is better. Would have been this bishop takes d7. Now knight takes d7, knight e2. I just give you the engine line, like the perfect play. But it's very intuitive how you play this, just getting a tempo, rook c8 back, castles, and now this is a little bit engine line that I probably would maybe have considered in the classical game if he develops, which he needs to do, otherwise it's just very hard to play. Rook c8, rook c1, you trade off the rook, bring the knight back to c1, but this knight unfortunately can't move ever. And the queen and the king can't move either. You can't castle, you can't bring the rook into the game. Just a paralyzed position. Only the bishop can maybe shuffle around a little bit. But let's say you play a move to h6, knight d3. Now the knight gets developed, g6, because you can't really move. Knight e5, and now the knight finally is overworked, and you're gonna lose a piece with black here. So a hard variation, I think. But bishop takes d7, knight takes d7, and this maybe I could have found this position with this knight which is constantly pinned, and the rook can't ever go here to trade itself off and defend the knight because there is still a bishop here controlling the square. So this bishop you see in the London system as well, in a different kind of opening, always a very strong piece that I like to have there. Instead of bishop takes d7, I played bishop g5. I somehow thought, okay, I can maybe take here and then take here, which would have been punished by queen c8, actually attacking the rook, and then the rook can also come in here. Black has counterplay here in all variations, and this would have been an option. I would probably at this point need to trade here, then the knight trades, and then maybe you can just develop here. This would, oh no, this doesn't work anymore. Queen b5, just trying to hold this here, the queen and the rook, so that the queen and the rook don't really have an impact here. This is an equal position. Black now has the open c-file and some counterplay. So bishop g5 could have been punished. He played rook c8 back, and now that the bishop is here instead of f4, it doesn't really control this square anymore. It still doesn't work, and this is why I say it's an interesting opening to play, especially in Blitz, but you just sometimes don't find all the correct ways to respond. This is also a game-winning mistake, actually, which could have been punished by bishop takes d7, rook takes d7, bishop f4, and now you see there is actually no defense against the rook going to b8 and just forking king and queen. And you can't block with the bishop either, because you can just take the bishop. The rook is again pinned here. So interesting for me. Again, you always need to calculate capture moves. Bishop takes d7, rook takes d7, bishop f4 would have been a very interesting way to actually win this game. You see black still underdeveloped, queen and king on the back rank, and this is a very hard position, and you basically lose a queen for a rook, and this is winning then. So rook c8, mistake which could have been punished, but I didn't find this. I played bishop takes f7, f6, g takes f6, and I thought somehow this should work with the overpowering this, but the rook now is really attacked, so you need to trade it off. Rook takes c7, queen takes c7, and now there is nothing here. After the whole magic and sparkling is gone, you have this position where everything is defended, king and queen here, the bishop is defended, and at some point ready to take here. So I decided in this position, bishop takes d7 to trade it off, queen takes d7, and you could go into this endgame here with the pawn structure against this pawn structure. I'm not sure which one is actually worse. But knight against the bishop. A knight normally is a little bit worse. Here all the pawns are on the same side, so it equals out a little bit. So this would have been an endgame that you could have gone for if you wanted to. But I was already in drawing mood, because I knew that I missed a couple of wins here. So I traded off the rooks, I traded off the bishops, and I didn't want to go into this endgame, so I just decided that with this exposed king and here the pawns and the bishop blocking, I have a perpetual check, queen a8 check, queen blocks the check, and now basically the queen can check from a4, from a3, depending on where the king goes, or it can check on the back rank, so you have no escape path for the king. Queen a4 check, queen blocks the check, queen a8 check, king e7, and now you have this a3 check, and we agreed to a draw here because there is nothing what black can do to actually escape the checks, and the game is drawn here. I think a very interesting opening with this e4, c5, a3, and can get spicy quite quickly if you want to win quickly with a very spectacular game, very tactical and not so strategic approach maybe. This opening is for you. Shorter time controls, very deadly weapon, a lot of tactics, a lot of traps. I hope you liked this video, and you're gonna check out my Instagram and my live stream where I stream Rocket League, Macabellum and chess, sometimes on Twitch. And write a comment or a feedback down into the comments what you think of the game and of the video, what I could improve, and what games you would like to see in the future. I'm gonna see you in the next video.